where software quality lives, breathes, and keeps evolving.
Welcome back to The Quality Beat, your go-to podcast for insights on AI, data quality, and everything in between. I'm your host, Gurpreet, and today we're diving into a challenge every AI team is facing, and that is, how do you actually measure generative AI? Now, the old metrics, accuracy, precision, recall, served us well for predictive models, but they don't tell the full story for AI that creates. Using them risks like hallucinating chatbots, biased summaries, and models that look great on paper but fail in production. So if you want to build generative AI that's reliable, fair, and truly delivers business value, then this episode's for you. Let's get started. And I'd like to extend a warm welcome to both Anamika, who is our global practice lead for emerging and special text practice, and Deepshikha, who is our global AI practice lead. So welcome both back to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Gurpreet. It's always great to be back on the quality. And I'm really excited about today's topic. Evaluating generative AI is something which is very important as we speak. And I think it's one of the most consequential challenges our industry faces right now.
Absolutely.
Absolutely thrilled to be here, Gurpreet, as always. And honestly, this is the conversation that the industry needs to be having, like Anamika said. Evaluation used to be an afterthought, and it sounds familiar because testing has always been an afterthought as well. But with generative AI, we can't afford to make that mistake again. So I'm really looking forward to getting into it.
Can't wait to hear all about your experiences on this. And you know the drill, as usual. Before we get stuck in, we'll have a quick fire round of questions. So are you ready?
Yep.
Yes.
Great. First one then. If you weren't in AI, what career would you pursue?
I'll go first. So I'd probably be a traveler. So I love exploring new places and trying out new cuisines and bring back a lot of souvenirs. So that's for me.
Nice.
I'd have gone into behavioral psychology, probably too much criminal psychology drama that I have seen and read. But yeah, understanding why people do what they do is very relevant to even AI alignment. So it's something that I enjoy as well.
Yeah, very interesting. Okay. And next one then. What's your favorite AI joke or meme? I'm sure you've come across quite a few here.
Yeah. So for me, my favorite one would be, so there's a guy who's asking AI, is this mushroom edible? And the AI says yes. And in the next scene, you see him lying in the hospital and AI pops up and asks, oh, you're right, that is poisonous. Would you like to learn more about poisonous mushrooms? So it's really funny until you realize that, it's actually a real problem called sycophancy. These models are trained to agree with you and not correct you, but yeah, still funny.
I think the example that I'm also going to give is, a person saying to the AI, stop agreeing with everything that I say. To which the AI replies, you make an excellent point. So I think same similar line here.
Yeah, it's definitely trained to agree with us all the time. And on that note, then, in one sentence, how would you define what a good generative AI is?
So I think, as per me, a good generative AI is one that delivers the right answer in the right context for the right person every time. This is where good would be defined for me.
And if
Okay.
I add on top of it, is a good generative AI is something which knows what it doesn't know, and it also tells you that it does not know that.
Right. So complete transparency is the message that I'm getting here. And considering the safety aspects, right? I guess it's all intertwined. Okay. Final one then. What's the funniest or weirdest hallucination you've seen from a generative model?
I think we have read about a lot of those hallucinations online, and I came across one Twitter post where a person asked ChatGPT about the world record of crossing the English Channel on foot. And ChatGPT gave a proper answer with the name of the person, duration, distance, and whatnot. Of course, all fake, right? So, and non existent. So, that was one funny one which I came across.
Oh, wow. The confidence is what gets you there.
And if I would like to add with respect to our experience that we are doing a lot of AI integration with our existing projects. So coding agents, I think, are a gold mine for this example, I would say. They would invent random libraries, invent dependency versions, and then spend, some amount of time debugging their own fiction that, import a new version which does not exist. So never once really asking a question if the package is even real. It's funny, but at the same time, problematic as well.
Very problematic. It's almost like it can very easily confuse itself. Right. So how do we have such confidence in it? On that note then, so let's get stuck into our topic today. We'll start with the basics, right? So why do traditional metrics like accuracy, precision, and recall fall short when applied to generative AI? What we're looking to understand here is what is it about these models that breaks the old evaluation rules? Deepshikha, if you could go into this.
Sure. So the problem is these matrices were built for a world where there's a right answer. Like, is this email a spam or not? Is this image a cat or not? Whether it is pass or fail, you can just define it. With generative AI, it does not work that way. Ask two people to summarize the same report, you'll get two completely different summaries and both perfectly valid. So there's no ground truth to measure against. And correctness is just one dimension. With, when a customer facing model responds, you're also asking, is it safe? Is it on brand? Is it actually relevant to what was asked? Or is it just, confidently doing pattern matching? So traditional metrics tell you none of that. So what really exposed the gap for me was the hallucination that, we were even talking about. A model can score well on every traditional metric and still fabricate information with complete conviction. Accuracy would not catch that. Precision would also not catch that. You would need a completely different evaluation mindset for it.
Absolutely, yeah. That makes complete sense. So if classical metrics aren't enough, then how do we define what good actually looks like for a generative AI model? Anamika, I'll let you speak on this.
Yeah, I actually love this question because it forces the teams to be explicit about their goals before they even think about the metric, right? So in our experience, good is always contextual. For a legal summarizer, good means factually accurate, jurisdiction appropriate, and free from hallucinated case references. And for a customer service bot, good means resolving the customer's issue in a friendly and compliant way. So the first step is always write down your definition of good in plain business language.
Yeah.
Then work backwards to identify which dimensions of output quality map to that definition of yours. Those dimensions become your evaluation criteria. And from there, you design your metrics. It sounds simple, but most teams skip this step and they jump straight to benchmarks. And that is what, we should avoid.
I think because it's so broad, right? Because it just as you were speaking, I was actually thinking, how would I do this and what criteria would I put down? So my next question kind of goes into what are the key new dimensions then to evaluate, right? So, how do concepts like factual consistency, reasoning quality, and fairness come into play when we judge generative models?
So there are several key dimensions we have found consistently important across different industries. For example, factual consistency is probably the most critical one. Does the output accurately reflect source documents or world knowledge? We measure this using, retrieval augmented verification, essentially checking whether the model's claims are actually grounded in what it was given.
Right.
Then reasoning quality matters, especially for agentic systems. Is the model making logical step-by-step decisions or just leaping into conclusions? Fairness and representation is also quite relevant. Does the model respond consistently across demographic groups and avoid reinforcing stereotypes.
Right.
Then, of course, we have robustness. How does quality hold up under paraphrased inputs, adversarial prompts, or out of distribution queries? And then there comes the alignment. So, is the model's behavior consistent with the organization's value and policies? And each of these requires its own measurement approach, and they often pull in different directions. So, you need a framework that balances them rather than optimizing just for one.
I see. Okay. And when you mention, so going into this a bit further, right, how do we build and maintain reliable evaluation data sets then for generative AI systems?
So, building reliable evaluation data sets is honestly one of the hardest parts of the whole exercise. You need diversity, covering a wide range of input types, edge cases, and failure mode. You need ground truth that reflects expert judgment and not just, crowdsourced labels. And you need to version and maintain those data sets as the model and the use cases evolve, right? So we recommend starting with a seed data set built from the real production data and then deliberately augmenting it with adversarial and edge case.
I'd add that the data set needs to be living. So models change, user behavior changes, and your evaluation data needs to keep up. Right? We have seen organizations treating their eval set as a one-time artifact. And then, they would wonder why their metrics look great, but production quality is drifting overall.
Yeah, I see. Okay. And then so it's clear, obviously, understanding these dimensions is critical, but these kinds of AI power different applications. So given that we have so many different use cases, how does the evaluation shift depending on the use case we have?
I think evaluation absolutely has to be use case specific. So one size fits all approach is one of the most common mistakes that we are seeing on the ground right now. So for a chatbot in healthcare, safety and empathy are paramount. A technically correct but a cold worded response would cause real harm here.
Right.
On the other hand, let's say for a code generation tool, functional correctness and security vulnerability avoidance are the primary KPIs. For a summarization tool in finance, precision of figures and absence of hallucinated numbers are non-negotiable, right?
Right.
So the underlying principle is the same. Define good in context. But the operationalization looks completely different across these scenarios. So of course, everything has to be, dependent on the use case.
Absolutely. And so you mentioned define good in each context. Now, looking into that a bit further, what is the difference between evaluating a standalone model versus a Gen AI powered product then?
So evaluating a standalone model is about measuring its intrinsic capabilities. How well does it reason, generate, how well does it retrieve? Evaluating a Gen AI powered product means measuring end-to-end outcomes. That includes the model itself, the overall prompt engineering that we did, the retrieval pipeline that we have, the UI UX that we have, and the human in the loop elements. So you can have a brilliant model inside a poorly designed product and get terrible outcomes.
Right.
Exactly. Product evaluation also brings in business metrics, adoption rate, task completion time, support ticket deflection, revenue impact. So they don't show up in any benchmark, but they are what executives are actually talking about or they really care about. So it's as important.
Of course, yeah, we hear about it time and time again, right? The importance of business impact, right? So let's just kind of bring that into a focus right now. So how do you connect the technical evaluation metrics we have to the real business outcomes that stakeholders are actually looking at, right? Is there a secret to bridging this gap?
So the bridge between technical matrices and business outcome is what we call the metric translation layer. You start by identifying the business KPIs that the AI system is supposed to move. say
Mhm.
reduce in average handle time in a contact center by 20%. Then you work backwards to identify which technical behaviors drive that KPI.
Right.
Faster, more accurate first response generation reduces the overall handle time. Then high intent recognition accuracy would reduce the transfers. And of course, lower hallucination rate would reduce the overall escalations. So
Mhm.
each business KPI map to a set of technical quality signals. And the secret here is making this mapping explicit and shared with the product teams, the data scientists that we have, the business stakeholders that we have. All the team members need to agree on it before evaluation actually begins. So, not after the model or your agent is already in production.
Okay, that makes sense. So what we're saying is take it right back to the source. Obviously, again, it's coming back to those Gen AI models, making sure they're actually doing what they should be doing, and then mapping each of those criteria that you identified earlier to the business, the business outcome that they want, right? Okay. And just going into that a bit further, then, what should actually be monitored after a Gen AI system goes live?
I think at minimum, monitor output quality scores, safety, flag rates, latency, and user satisfaction signals.
And beyond that, track input distribution shift. Are users asking things the model was not trained for? Also, track retrieval quality if you have RAG components, for example. And track downstream business matrices weekly so you can catch the degradation early.
Yes. So it's almost like it's an ongoing evaluation. So where prior to this, the old metrics were quite standstill, and you could kind of put them in place, and then just you had that as a benchmark. And now we have this moving benchmark by the sounds of it. So let's talk about the role of humans in this process, right? When is human in the loop evaluation necessary, and when can teams rely on automated scoring? Is there something here where we can strike the right balance?
Yes, I think human in the loop evaluation is essential in 4 scenarios. Let's talk about each of them. So, first, when the stakes are high, it's a legal matter, medical, financial outputs, all of these areas, they need human review regardless of automated score. Second, I would say when you are evaluating subjective qualities like tone, empathy, or any brand voice that you want to, showcase. No automated metric reliably captures those. Right?
Yeah.
Third, when you are launching a new model or there's a significant update, so always run a human evaluation before going live. So that's where, if there is something big going wrong, you will catch it before it actually goes wrong. And fourth, when your automated metrics are showing conflicting signals. For routine, lower stake evaluation, let's say at scale, automated scoring is appropriate, but it should always be calibrated against human judgment. And the calibration should be revisited regularly. The right balance is a tiered model, automated at scale, human for high stakes, and calibration. I think this is the right balance of the mix.
I see. Yeah. And that makes sense as well. And you mentioned automated at scale now, right? So just rewinding a bit from the human in the loop part, how do you design test cases specifically for hallucinations, bias, and any unsafe responses?
So, for hallucination, design test cases with verifiable factual claims, questions with known correct answers, document grounded queries where the answer is or is not in the source, and counterfactual prompts designed to tempt the model into confabulation.
And I think for bias, we can test across demographic groups systematically, names, locations, professions, and check for the consistency of the, quality and the sentiment.
Mhm.
For unsafe responses, we use red teaming techniques. So adversarial prompts, jailbait attempts, boundary pushing scenarios, and critically document your test cases and update them as you discover a new failure, or new failure modes in production. So your test suite should grow continuously. It's again, not a one time or like an activity that you do just once, but this has to be ongoing.
Yeah, it really does sound like this ongoing evaluation piece is absolutely key here. And before we finish then, I want to zoom out and talk about practical takeaways for teams who are just starting out in this. So if a team is starting to build their evaluation framework today, what's the one thing that they should focus on, and what's the most common mistake you see teams make?
If I could give one piece of advice, it would be this. Basically, you start with your use case definition, not your matrix. Write down in plain language what success looks like for your specific application. Then you build a small, high quality evaluation data set that covers your core scenarios, some of the edge cases, and known failure modes that you have identified. Even 200 well curated examples will give you more insight than running against a generic benchmark of 10,000. So the most common mistake that I think we have seen is teams benchmarking against public leaderboards and then treating a high score there as a green light to production, because we are always in a hurry to just deploy.
Yeah.
But those benchmarks often have nothing to do with your actual use cases. And the gap between benchmark performance and production quality can be enormous.
I see. Okay. One last one then. What should every team include in its first Gen AI evaluation dataset?
I think every first evaluation data set should include representative examples of your most frequent user query, examples of your highest risk scenarios, let's say where a failure would be most costly, and edge cases and boundary conditions, and the adversarial examples designed to test the safety and robustness of the system that you're trying to design.
Okay.
I'd add that also include examples where the correct answer is, I don't know, or I can't help with that. So testing refusal behavior and overall graceful degradation is just as important as testing any positive scenario.
That's a great point. Yeah. I think it's one where a lot of the times we fall short. So definitely a great point. Great learnings from this. Thank you so much, Anamika and Deepshikha, for joining us again and sharing your insights into generative AI. We do appreciate your expertise and perspectives on this.
Thank you so much, Gurpreet. So this has been, I think, a fantastic conversation. My parting thought here would be evaluation is not the end of the AI life cycle. It's the ongoing heartbeat that keeps it healthy. So invest in it seriously, and your AI systems will earn and keep the trust of the people who depend on them.
Thank you, Gurpreet. Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure talking to you. And I'd leave everyone with this particular thought that, the question is to ask is not how do I score my AI, but how do I know my AI is doing good in the world? So when you answer that question rigorously, you've built an evaluation framework that really matters for your application.
Certainly. Thank you both for leaving us with those great points. And thanks to our listeners for tuning into the Quality Beat. To summarize, we looked at why old metrics don't cut it for generative AI and why things like factual accuracy, fairness, and business impact matter now more than ever. We explored how evaluation changes based on the use case, the need for continuous ongoing monitoring, and when human judgment is key. So if you take one thing away, it's that measuring what truly matters is the foundation of trustworthy AI. We'll catch you next time and keep raising the bar on AI quality.